Every time I get into a conversation with someone asking about my bees, one of the most common question is what are the biggest problems you face? And I always answer kuto or mites. Expectedly, they're surprised that an insect already that small can still have kuto. Now, I'm not going into detail today about these destructive pests, but if you're watching this, you're probably someone who's trying to figure out how to deal with them. So today I'll share how I keep them under control. There are several ways online to prevent mites from wreaking havoc on our apiaries, but out of all those options, I've only tried three. One, Mite Strips, two, Thymol, and three, Oxalic Acid Vaporization. Let's start with my experience with Thymol. I've used it twice. At first, it was really promising, lots of dead mites after treatment. But then I noticed the bees were reacting negatively to it. Some queens stopped laying, some colonies developed sac brood and chalk brood, so I stopped using it immediately. Maybe I wasn't using the correct dosage or timing, or maybe I wasn't meeting the right conditions, but I couldn't afford to experiment anymore and risk losing colonies, so I stopped using it. Next are the mite strips. I used them during my first year mostly because that's all I knew back then. It worked okay until I bought a new batch online. I used the same dosage, but a few hours later, I saw one colony throwing out dead drones and nurse bees, a lot of them. It turned out those strips were too potent, and I didn't know I had to wipe them down first until they lost their stickiness. That incident scared me off, and I didn't use them again for a while. So I moved on to oxalic acid vaporization because I heard it was an organic option. At first I didn't have a vaporizer that time, so I borrowed one from my mentor. It wasn't the usual vaporizer you see on the internet. I'll show you the example of how it looked like at least. It's just a torch with an extended nozzle where you add the powder and stick the tip into the hive entrance, sealing it up and letting it smoke. It worked, but a few bees died unfortunately during the process. Maybe because I was doing it at the entrance where obviously there are always bees, which could probably be avoided if I had treated from the sides or the back of the hive boxes. And that's what led me to try experimenting to something else. Since I don't have my own vaporizer, I tried to DIY setup. I modified my removable bottom boards by cutting a hole just big enough to fit a tin can, and that's what I've been using ever since. Here's how I do it. First, I cover all holes, especially the entrance, and do the treatment late in the afternoon when most of the bees are back. In every brood box or 8 to 10 frames, I add 3 to 5 grams of oxalic powder, that's half a tablespoon. This is important. The recommended amount is only 1 gram, but lots of factors affect that. In our warm climate here in the Philippines, higher dosages seem to be tolerated. Also, my hives are very well ventilated. It has screen bottom boards, open airflow, so even when I seal the entrance, a lot of smoke still seeps out. This setup allows me to use a higher dosage without harming the colony. Also, I don't keep the hive sealed for more than 5 minutes. How did I arrive at this dosage? Honestly, it was a lucky accident. I used too much once, but nothing bad happened, luckily. So I kept the dosage, monitored carefully, and it's been okay since. For beginners, start small. Try 1 gram first, see how your colony reacts, and then adjust. If your hive isn't ventilated or doesn't have a screen bottom board, reduce the dosage. Otherwise, it might be harmful to the bees. Next, after adding the powder, I slowly torch it from underneath the can until I see most of the smoke has been released. Remember, don't make the flame too strong. The high heat from the metal can could harm the bees above. I haven't done this yet, but maybe next time I'll try puffing a bit of smoke before the treatment so the bees below can disperse, minimizing casualties. And then I leave it covered until I finish doing the same treatment on the next colony. Once I finish that treatment on the next colony, I remove the cover and then repeat as I finish all the colonies in my apiary. I do this 5 times every 5 days for each colony. Why? Because oxalic acid only kills phoretic mites, the ones crawling on adult bees. It doesn't reach the ones hiding inside brood cells. So by treating every 5 days over 5 rounds, I cover an entire brood cycle. That means as new bees emerge with new mites, I catch them before those mites can lay eggs again. Every time I do this, I see tons of dead mites the next day. It's what helped kept my mite levels under control. So far, it has been the most effective treatment I've done for mites in my 3 years of experience. Maybe it's the high dosage, or maybe it's the smoke reaching deep into the hive effectively. Either way, it's worked for me. The only downside, the only thing I hate about it is it's time consuming and not great for my back because it involves lots of crouching and bending, and it would not be ideal if you're handling a lot of colonies. So, moving forward, I decided this kind of treatment. For smaller colonies, 5 frames below, I will just use Mite Strips. Once they hit 8 frames up, I switch to oxalic acid vaporization. I usually do this at least twice a year, once around October and again in February before the honey flow starts. Now it's July, August. It's still the rainy season and most of my colonies are still small since I've been splitting them. Just using the mite strips. For the supplies, the oxalic acid powder is available on Shopee. The torch is also available online or supermarkets or even hardware stores. The bottom boards, you can modify your existing bottom board if it's made up of wood. But now I'm using the Sintra board. It's easier to cut and doesn't burn as easily. For the can, I use long tin can so the flame doesn't touch the board underneath. I know there are proper vaporizers online and it's also much easier to use, and maybe someday I'll transition to those or try building one similar. But for now, this setup works since I have only 8 to 12 colonies at a time, and it's affordable and effective for me. I hope this helps, and let me know if what your experience with mites are and how you treated them. Thank you. Bye.